Believe it or not, I am not a creative. I think that calling myself a creative perpetuates the myth that there are two types of people in the world: creative people and non-creative people. In reality, creativity is part of how we all think and engage the world. Artists do not have a monopoly on creativity. Everybody has a certain level of what's called trait openness. There are 5 main personality traits in psychology. One of them is called trait openness, or openness to experience. Now, openness refers to what level a person actively seeks and appreciates difference and novelty. It's highly correlated with creativity, and it has 2 main aspects. One is openness, which is primarily perceptual or sensory, and this aspect, in a 2015 study, it predicted creative achievement in the arts. So very, very highly correlated to having an artistic personality, in the sense of dealing with physical things in a perceptual or sensory way. The other aspect of openness is intellect, which is exploration through abstract information. And this predicted creative achievement in the sciences. So those 2 combined equals openness to experience, which is that big fat trait, like I mentioned. Now, the prevailing theory is that openness and intelligence are correlated to an extent. Above a certain threshold, the correlation becomes non-existent. So you need a certain level of openness to have a certain IQ. However, above that threshold, the correlation is either irrelevant or non-existent. A study by J. N. Perkins in 1997 linked intelligence, openness to experience, and creativity, all 3 of those together. This study and a study more recently by Shi, Dai, and Lu, looking at Chinese children in urban and rural areas among a sample of 831 primary schools, found 3 things. It found that 1, environmental factors can encourage a person's creativity. 2, that intelligence enables creativity, and cognitive abilities and processes are responsible for the production of novel and creative thoughts, and thus can explain how creativity is materialized. And 3, that personality traits such as openness to experience predispose individuals to novel and creative ideation, and are thus an essential mechanism for explaining the extent to which cognitive resources are utilized to create novel ideas. So the mechanisms of creativity, to kind of sum that up, are environmental, cognitive, and personality factors. So people aren't just born creative. They might be predisposed to be creative, but even personality is changeable, particularly at an early age. We have genes, but we also have epigenetics, right? People can change a lot. So this means that if you're not just born creative, that creativity is primarily learned. It's also related to the release of dopamine in the face of novelty, which perhaps might be one of the drives to seek or to think creatively. And people who expose themselves to novelty will reinforce the release of dopamine in response to novel situations. So you can also think about certain aspects of creativity. I think this is helpful as well. The Center for Excellence in Teaching in Learning at Iowa University enumerates a number of these aspects. One of these aspects that they find is fluency, which has to do with the numbers of idea generated. 2 is originality and imagination, which has to do with the unusual nature, the unique nature, and the novel nature of those ideas. 3, elaboration, which has to do with the ability to explain those ideas in detail. 4, flexibility, curiosity, and resistance to closure, which has to do with the ability to generate multiple solutions simultaneously or consecutively. 5, complexity, which has to do with the detail and the implications of those ideas, to the recognition of patterns and the noticing of similarities and differences. And then 6, risk-taking, so the willingness to be wrong and to admit it. Basically to take a leap and to recognize when that is incorrect and go back and revise your initial pursuit or launching into a certain direction. So everybody, I believe, can tap into all of those aspects of creativity, and everybody has a right and an ability to be creative no matter what your field. Whether you're a cook, whether you're a mathematician, whether you're an accountant, we can all be creative. As the researcher Brené Brown puts it, there's no such thing as creative people and non-creative people. There are only people who use their creativity and people who don't. That's from her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. So those who exercise their creativity, who push the boundaries of their work, are often the ones who make the biggest leaps and reap the biggest rewards. So ask yourself the question, have you bought into a myth that to enter adulthood and the real world necessitates letting go of creativity and becoming part of the slog of the mind-numbing grind that we all talk about? I believe that creativity, in an alternative to that, allows us to take control of our work, whatever we're doing, and to improve ourselves and whatever we produce. I'm not a creative, I'm a professional artist.